Welcome to The Power of Now What, a podcast on overcoming the various challenges and problems that one encounters when on the spiritual path, when on a spiritual journey, when engaged in a practice or discipline such as meditation, and even post-awakening and post-enlightenment. This is episode 13 on the subject of recovering from anxiety, alternatively titled How to Stop Worrying About a Future That Doesn't Exist. In this talk, I will utilize a slightly different approach than with previous talks. As we are dealing with the subject of anxiety, I would like to use the opportunity to introduce a practice that can help alleviate the symptoms and go some way to providing the platform in which the recovery from anxiety can occur. I will be introducing a breathing exercise during this talk, and you will notice that there is a background ambient white noise. I am introducing both of these here in case you are currently experiencing or usually experience anxiety, as both of these methods have a real and immediate effect. I would like to explain what anxiety truly is. From this ground of deeper understanding, we are far more able to find effective methods of recovery. I will discuss some of the solutions to anxiety, including what I have found to be the most effective for myself, and also explore the reasons why anxiety as a condition can persist despite our genuine and best efforts to overcome it. I will explain the meditative approach to anxiety, and then, in the second half of this talk, introduce a powerful, practical, and effective practice that, if performed with sincerity, will end your anxiety permanently, once and for all. Anxiety is a far more common and dangerous problem than most would dare to think about. It can result in a very miserable life of fear and exhaustion. Anxiety prevents many people from accessing the life they could be living. It is also a very sad fact that many people are suffering from chronic anxiety without realizing it, and those who do become aware of their chronically anxious state find it is a very difficult problem to recover from and subsequently to stay recovered from, as it often reoccurs throughout life. If you suffer from this condition, or you have found this talk today because you are currently suffering, I would like to offer my sympathy, as I have suffered so terribly with anxiety in the past. I would also like to offer you some hope that this can be overcome, and overcome permanently. You are doing the right thing by seeking solutions to this condition, because the solution that works for you does exist and will be found if you persevere. You can look forward to a life of peace, stability, and a calm state of mind permanently. Please recognize the occasional feelings of despair and hopelessness at the reoccurrence of the condition are actually just a symptom of the condition itself, and in time that too will disappear. Just because something reappears on occasion does not mean this cycle has to repeat infinitely. Each time you recover, you will have better knowledge, experience, and understanding of the condition, and sooner or later it will not return. If you do not suffer from anxiety, please feel free to listen anyway, as you may find some of the practices and topics discussed here are still beneficial for you or someone you know. To begin, I'd like to introduce a simple breathing technique that can alleviate anxiety. I'll introduce this now, and if you feel it would be useful for you, see if you can continue the practice throughout this talk. Begin by redirecting your attention towards the sensations of breathing. Just noticing your breath and how it feels in the body. Breathe in for a count of 8 seconds and out for a count of 8 seconds. Breathe deeply into the stomach. I find it helps to visualize a balloon I am inflating in the stomach just below the belly button. Breathing in for 8 seconds inflates the balloon fully. Breathing out for 8 seconds deflates the balloon fully. This can be a challenge to begin with for both physical and psychological reasons. If it proves too challenging, just aim for 6 seconds in and 6 seconds out, and gradually increase this time as you continue. This doesn't have to be strict on the timings, just the intention to continue deep breathing is enough. The timings simply serve to remind you to breathe as deeply as is possible for you. Let's take a moment to see if we can establish this now. Just breathing as deeply and slowly as you can into the stomach, trying for 8 seconds on the way in to inflate the lungs fully, and breathing out for 8 seconds to deflate the lungs fully. Breathing deeply like this is called diaphragmatic breathing, and it has a powerful effect on calming the nervous system. At times throughout this talk, I will redirect your attention to this breathing exercise as a prompt, as it's very easy to forget to do. By repeatedly returning to this practice, your mind will be in a calmer and more receptive state to new information. So, what is anxiety? Anxiety is different to worry and overthinking. Worry and overthinking are a habit of the mind that can be a symptom and a result of anxiety, but they are a surface-level manifestation and a result of the anxiety, not the anxiety itself. Anxiety is a state that exists within the body. Anxiety is essentially the body's threat response system that has become locked in a state of activation. This state is characterized by an overstimulated nervous system alongside an increase in stress hormones in the bloodstream, including adrenaline and cortisol. A vicious feedback loop occurs here, as the presence of certain stress hormones in the blood, such as adrenaline, trigger the nervous system further. The subsequent activation of the nervous system further increases the chemical presence in the bloodstream. The nervous system assumes there is a threat due to the chemicals in the system, and so it activates further, and the chemicals in the system increase as a result of the nervous system activating. The nervous system is activated by the chemicals that it itself releases. There can be many varied causes of this state, from trauma, illness, stress, and pain. But whatever the triggering cause is, the anxious state is the same. the body and mind believes in the presence of a threat, primarily because it has activated its own threat response system. Unusually, it will do this even when there is simply no threat present, or that the threat has long since passed. The result is a state of constant tension. There can be physical symptoms of shaking, sweating, muscle tightness, and rapid eye movement. Physical agitation and restlessness also occur. In the mind, one will experience overthinking, excessive worry, and a chronic feeling of uneasiness. This is exhausting. Being locked in a constant state of tension, both body and brain becomes fatigued, which further increases stress. In mild cases, this results in annoying symptoms that interfere with one's ability to function for a brief time before they subside. In more severe cases, this can be debilitating, causing further psychiatric symptoms such as depression and severely impacting an individual's ability to function. This state of anxiety prevents the body from entering its relaxation mode and therefore interferes with digestion, immune system function, sleep patterns, and social functioning. In essence, one begins to conduct one's life in a state of overstimulation, always tired, with poor eating habits, unable to function socially, unhealthy sleeping patterns, and almost no energy. This inevitably leads to life circumstances deteriorating and becoming unhealthy, which then leads to even more anxiety. And so the cycle continues. It is very common in the modern world for people to be in this state without realizing it for years. In essence, walking around utterly miserable, but believing that this is just the way life is and that nothing can be done about it. Often, people will self-medicate their chronic anxiety without realizing it, drinking alcohol, taking drugs, overeating, and binging on TV shows in an effort to remove the symptoms of the anxious state, believing that this is recreation, when in fact it is self-medication. Now, are we still breathing deeply? A redirection of the attention towards the breath. Allow the breath to rise and fall, breathing in for 8 seconds and out for 8 seconds. Trying to breathe as deeply into the stomach as possible, inflating all the way up, and then breathing out, deflating all the way out. Now that we know the nature of what we're dealing with when it comes to anxiety, let's look at some solutions. The nervous system and biological response to stress and anxiety evolved in humans long before the mind. Therefore, it stands to reason that cognitive approaches are not always effective in resolving the more severe and chronic forms of anxiety. A physiological state requires a physiological solution. The common approach is to attempt to simply stop worrying on a cognitive mind level. This obviously is ineffective and leads to frustration and despair. as this is akin to pruning the leaves on a weed without addressing the roots. The weed simply grows again. Often, we feel like although we understand the problem fully, the understanding itself doesn't change the condition. There are many well-researched, deeper solutions to anxiety. Many of them are very effective, and I would encourage you to try many to see which combination works for you. My personal recommendation would be cardiovascular exercise for its direct effect on burning the stress hormones out of the body. This interrupts the anxiety feedback loop and the subsequently calmer biological state has the effect of relaxing the nervous system. As the nervous system subsides into a far calmer state in the post-exercise window, the stress hormones are reduced alongside. This is why one feels so relaxed and euphoric after strenuous exercise. I have found cold showers and a low-sugar diet also to be effective for the same reasons. In the short term, I have found the various medications for anxiety to be effective also, although I wouldn't class them as a long-term solution. Talking therapies and cognitive behavioural therapies I have also found to be very beneficial. I have certainly found that self-medication with alcohol is not effective. The same goes for overeating. I've also found it completely ineffective to simply attempt to stop worrying and to take on the psychological stance of simply trying to get on with it, as it were. Those are not effective at all. For each individual, the effective approach will be different. However, in general, it stands to reason that one must resolve both the stress chemicals in the body and the nervous system agitation simultaneously. If we were to resolve one without resolving the other, the cycle would simply repeat itself. For example, if you found a way to remove the stress hormones from the bloodstream, but the nervous system is still activated, it wouldn't be long until the stress hormones are present in the bloodstream once again, and vice versa. It also stands to reason that each individual must find an approach that works for them. It is not always practical or reasonable for an individual to exercise for various reasons, and medication is not always effective. The same goes for talking therapies. There can be many barriers to each method of recovery. So the method of recovery from anxiety will differ from individual to individual. There will also be many differences in the circumstances and the causes of the heightened state in the first place. Now, are we still breathing deeply? All the way in and all the way out. 8 seconds if we can. Inflate all the way and deflate all the way. Breathing deeply into the stomach. By far, the most consistently effective and practical method I have found to alleviate anxiety is the practice of meditation. In my case, meditation provided the background in which my anxiety, which had previously been chronic and severe, subsided into an intermittent and moderate state. In time, this then became intermittent and mild, and eventually, my anxiety condition disappeared. Meditation taught me the concept of staying present, and this has stood the test of time. Previously, my primary method of relieving anxiety was exercise. But during a bout of chronic pain, when I could not exercise, my anxiety returned, and my only fallback was meditation. I can confirm that this was effective in managing my anxiety during some very challenging circumstances in which I was unable to access my usual methods of recovery. Meditation has the advantage of being a method that can be practiced anywhere at any time, regardless of the situation or circumstance. As long as you are conscious and breathing, meditation can be performed. Meditation has a direct effect on the nervous system for a variety of reasons. The deeper breathing oxygenates the blood, which can flush out the stress chemicals. The rhythm of the breath has a regulating effect on the nervous system, as the brain enjoys the security and predictability of rhythm. Taking conscious control of the breath, one will feel more in control of the body. This unconsciously affirms a sense of assuredness. Meditation refocuses attention towards the present moment, which reassures the body and mind, as it's only the mind's projection about imagined and perceived threats that is causing the continuation of the anxious state. But within the present moment, the body and mind is totally safe. It is not possible to worry about the future when established in presence, as you can clearly see and experience that the future simply doesn't exist. The reality of the situation is that all is well. It simply takes a refocusing of the attention to establish this in the mind and body. To fully recover from anxiety, one must establish a true sense of safety and security within the body, not just the mind. The deeper we can go into meditative practice, the calmer the chemical and nervous state we will be in. By immersing mind and body in a deep state of meditative awareness, one achieves a relaxation of the body and mind that is akin to deep sleep. This has a profound effect on both blood chemistry and nervous system response simultaneously. Not only this, but a retraining of mind habits begins. When meditating, the mind is no longer in its habitually hyper-vigilant state, as this is a far healthier and more enjoyable state to be in. The mind automatically begins to come to this state of rest more often. The mind will begin to seek this state and establishes a new habit of calmer, more present thoughts and feelings. The body and mind will return to a resting state quicker after stimulation and periods of exertion. The body and mind secures itself in a resting state as its natural dormant mode. This addresses both the nervous system and biological response simultaneously, and in time forms a deeper solution to anxiety than any other method. All of the benefits of meditation can be achieved with a regular practice of just 10 minutes a day. It can be practiced anywhere, at any time. It is natural, free, and available for all. I highly recommend it. Now, are we still breathing deeply? This focusing of the attention towards the breath is the meditative practice. Simply focus attention only on the sensations of breathing. Allow the breath to rise and fall within the body. Inflate all the way up and deflate all the way out. Breathing as deeply as you can, deep into the stomach, all the way in and all the way out. This refocuses the attention on the present moment. There is no future, there is no past, there is only now. Simply allow the breath to rise and fall, and bring the mind fully into the present by focusing attention entirely on the sensations of breathing. It is not possible to experience a future sensation, nor is it possible to experience a previous sensation. So by focusing attention entirely on the sensations that are happening now, you automatically bring your mind entirely within this present moment. By focusing the attention entirely on this present moment, both the biological state within the body and the nervous system can finally begin to subside into a state of relaxation. This can feel a little uncomfortable to begin with, and do not worry if you find that your agitation and restlessness continues. This is the habit of the body and mind. As the body and mind begins to sense that it's relaxing, it has one last attempt to try and activate its threat response system. It has probably been activated for quite some time, and therefore it attempts to perpetuate itself. So as you begin to relax, the threat response system tries to keep itself maintained. However, it is time to let go. Simply breathe deeply, focus attention entirely on the present moment, and simply enjoy this rest, this relaxation, as you bring your attention entirely towards the sensations of breathing. Breathing deeply in, 8 seconds, and all the way out, 8 seconds. You can probably already feel that this practice has some effect on the body and mind, and that's only through a few short minutes of practice. If you were to practice this for 10 minutes a day or upwards, it will have a profound and permanent effect on your body and mind. This will go a long way to resolving your anxiety once and for all. Now, everything I have said thus far is grounded within the realm of logic, reason, rationality, and scientific understanding. I would be confident presenting all of the information thus far to a scientific panel of academics and scholars, scientists, doctors, psychiatrists, and most would conclude my reasoning, my logic is sound. If you are new to finding solutions to your anxiety, and new to meditative practices, I would suggest that everything I have said thus far is more than sufficient for you to continue your recovery. There is no need to listen any further if you feel like there has been enough information and advice to try some of these methods and practices for yourself. Feel free to do this first before returning to the second half of this talk at a later time. I say this because in the next section of this talk, I would like to go deeper into the spiritual aspect of meditation and to explore and explain a truly spiritual resolution for anxiety. If understood and embodied fully, this understanding will end your anxiety once and for all. I present this here because although meditation and staying present is a solution that allows people to function and to have an acceptable level of anxiety, this is not always satisfactory for everyone. And if one seeks to be fully rid of anxiety, totally and completely, permanently, a spiritual approach is needed. This will require discussion of a subject that may not be for everyone, as it does not fit the current scientific, medical model of the world, although it will in future. I would also advise that if you already have a well-established faith, philosophy, or belief system, this next section may not be for you, as it requires a different understanding of the nature of reality. So I will understand if you would choose to stop listening now. However, if you are in a position to explore with me and are feeling open and receptive to a different perspective on reality today, then by all means continue to listen to this talk. It stands to reason that in order to be permanently rid of any problem, one must address and eliminate the root cause. Without eliminating the roots, the problem will simply grow again. Thus far, I have discussed anxiety on the physical and biological level. And there we find the cause is a malfunctioning limbic system. All well and good. However, there is one final, deeper level underneath all of that in which we can find the true resolution to this problem once and for all. We must go all the way through this final layer in order to be rid of anxiety. The solution lies in our understanding of consciousness itself and the beliefs that arise around the common understanding of our essential nature. By consciousness here, I mean the mechanism of awareness by which you are aware of your body, your mind, and the world around you. This is what I mean by the term consciousness. The root cause of anxiety is the belief that your consciousness arises within the brain. Because of this belief, your mind assumes that it in some way inhabits a temporary, mortal, biological body that is subject to danger. As such, it is on a constant high alert for threats, not just physically, but socially and emotionally too. This belief is the cause of almost all human suffering. If instead of that belief, we go directly to our experience, without forming any belief or any opinion based upon that which we experience, we find that although we are aware of the body, although we are aware of the mind, we have no evidence to suggest that the body and mind creates consciousness. What if we were to discover that in fact the body and mind arise within consciousness and are a product of consciousness rather than the other way around? We are aware of the body. We are aware of the mind. But we have come to believe that the body and mind therefore creates consciousness. And this is a mistake. And it's this mistake that is the root cause of all anxiety. Consciousness is the only ever-present element of your experience. Often consciousness goes unnoticed because it remains in the background and is rarely explored or examined, and it is never questioned. We experience a flow of sensations, perceptions, thoughts, and feelings, which are infinite in their expression and are constantly changing. Our attention is usually fixated on these things. However, if you redirect attention towards the background awareness of everything, you will find that the conscious awareness doesn't change. Everything that consciousness is aware of simply comes and goes and is temporary, fluctuating. But all of this is within the ever-present background of awareness. One could imagine consciousness as the sky in which the weather appears. The flow of sensations, perceptions, thoughts, and feelings are the weather, the clouds. Sometimes pleasant, sometimes unpleasant, but all of it rises and falls within the open sky. Experiences in life can be unpleasant, uncomfortable, and painful, but the awareness itself is simply aware of this. When you look very closely, you realize that pure consciousness is not affected in any way by the content of experiences. So, how can this understanding help us to remove anxiety? Simply by experiencing the relief that comes from understanding you are not fully subjected to the temporary state of life you are currently in. You are able at any moment to recognize the background consciousness and therefore know relief from your circumstances. This results in a physiological and psychological state of total calm. It is important to understand that you are consciousness. You are the awareness. You are not what you are aware of. To illustrate this further, consider that the sky is never affected by the weather. Even the fiercest storm does not damage the sky. The storm is simply a temporary appearance within the sky. The sky remains as vast, expansive, open spaciousness always. Experientially, one can always fall back into the pure awareness itself and be relieved of the temporary state the body and mind is in. This interrupts the anxiety feedback loop on the deepest and most profound level of all, the recognition of true existential safety. Through the recognition that consciousness does not arise in the brain, we are relieved of our most fundamental existential terror, the horror of mortality. Through this understanding, you come to recognize that the very consciousness that is aware of your experiences has always been here and always will be here. It just so happens that you are experiencing life as the temporary form of a particular human being at this time. You can always enjoy the peace of pure consciousness and know that all states and circumstances in life are simply temporary appearances within it. In addition, the belief in being housed in a temporary body and brain gives rise to a perpetually playing narrative in one's thoughts. A story arises that revolves around this belief, and we come to habitually stress and worry about this story. Not just on a physical level, but also a constant worry, rumination, and discomfort about our social and emotional circumstances also. This narrative, this story, the story of you with a past, a present, and a future, a beginning, a middle, and an end, is the cause of a great deal of totally unnecessary suffering, as often the external circumstances threaten the validity of this story, and so we feel hurt, threatened, or angered by the circumstances. But understand that it is not the external circumstances that cause that suffering, but our belief in the internal narrative, the story of you. By removing the narrative, removing the story, and going instead to pure consciousness, all threats on a social and emotional level are also removed. The safety and security that results from this is unshakable and deeply felt on a body and mind level. The nervous system and biological threat response to social and emotional pain is greatly diminished and eventually eradicated, simply by pulling attention back into the experience of pure consciousness itself, and no longer continuing this narrative and this story, that you have come to believe is your life. Consciousness itself is not subject to the same threats on a physical, social, or emotional level as the human body and brain is, and therefore consciousness has no need for anxiety and does not worry. Once this understanding is firmly established, the body and mind will soon begin to experience the deepest sense of relief from all fear, as the illusion of being a temporary, vulnerable, and fragile body-mind vanishes, and taking its place is pure, invincible consciousness. The individual narratives of the human body and mind come and go and are always changing, but the consciousness will remain the same always. Open, empty, pure, clear. The deeper one immerses oneself in the pure consciousness, the more of the unnecessary suffering will diminish and eventually vanish. As this consciousness is ever present and always available, there is no need for a frantic changing of life circumstances in order to facilitate peace, security, and comfort. As peace, security, and comfort are not states, but are in fact the very essence of your being. This understanding will only yield results on a psychological and physiological level through direct experience of pure consciousness. Once learned, this understanding will deepen your perspective and begin to finally end the anxiety feedback loop permanently. As nothing can threaten consciousness itself, the consciousness that you are, this overactive alarm system, which is the nervous system and the biological response, will finally switch off. The easiest way to achieve this is through certain meditative practices that are designed to allow the individual to experience pure consciousness directly and naturally. Often these practices direct attention away from the usual content of the mind and body, away from the individual personal narrative, and towards consciousness itself. This is sometimes called self-inquiry, self-realization, non-duality, or Advaita Vedanta. In common terms, the experience of pure consciousness itself is referred to as enlightenment or awakening. The permanent establishment within the experience of pure consciousness itself, unmixed with the content of the body, mind, and world. You will be able to find versions of this that will be of the most benefit to you as an individual, as there have been many teachers that have found unique ways of expressing this understanding. Ultimately, the solution for anxiety is to realize the illusory nature of the way we have been habitually perceiving the world. Many go through life constantly afraid of something that simply isn't real. Suffering from a delusion. If you wish to rid yourself of anxiety forever, all that is necessary is a realigning of perspective in order to truly experience reality as it actually is. Through this understanding, you can look forward to a life of total serenity, inner peace, and a true security at all times. Pure consciousness is always available to you. Always. It is present in every experience. It has never once left you and never could leave you. You are always aware of now. You have simply become lost in the stream of thoughts, sensations, and perceptions, and somewhere along the way forgot that you are in fact the infinite, universal consciousness that sits behind everything. The space in which the body and mind appears is not the body and mind itself. Now, are we still breathing? All the way in and all the way out. 8 seconds. Deeply in. And 8 seconds deeply out. Can we inflate all the way, breathing deeply into the stomach? And breathing out, deflating all the way. I wish you the very best of luck in your continued recovery, and I would encourage you to persevere with your recovery from anxiety, as there is a solution to the condition, no matter how bleak it may appear at times. Now you know the most powerful understanding of all, and all that remains is to start practicing. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Power of Now What. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, as this really helps the channel to grow. If you're a Spotify listener, please consider following me on YouTube, and vice versa. I am so heartened by the response to the podcast. It really does mean so much. So I'd like to thank you personally for listening, particularly if you've listened all this way through. If you'd like me to be a guest on your podcast, I am available. Just drop me an email. I'll pop my email address in the description. If you're interested in some of my guided meditations, you can now buy my complete collection. This is a collection of 34 MP3s that you can download and keep for ad-free listening everywhere offline. This collection includes meditations on everything I have discussed in this talk, including anxiety and experiencing the bliss of pure consciousness. I'll put the link to my website where you can buy these guided meditations in the description also. That's everything for today. Take care, be well, and stay present.